I will get to that question, but I just wanted to sort of perhaps comment on some of the other remarks that were made. And I think that certainly Ambassador Salon has said extremely eloquently a lot of the points, in particular the point about the size of the military expenditure and so forth. But I just want to go back to a comment that was made by the EU representative, which is to say that the EU can perhaps show a good example to the developing countries about how to do things in a better way. That's a very bad paraphrasing, but it's more or less what I understood. And I think that's extremely problematic when you look at the historical uneven relationships, the very unfair relationships between the rich industrialised countries and the poorer developing countries of the South. The kind of institutions that have been built up in Europe over many centuries, the economic wealth that has been accumulated very much through processes of colonialism and expansion of economic markets, the way in which cultures and societies have really been systematically destroyed by those same sorts of processes, the very unfair global trade rules, the very destructive actions of organisations like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, the activities of European transnational corporations in the rest of the world. I think that all of these things have, over, in fact, centuries, left many countries in the South perhaps culturally rich but economically extremely dependent on the rest of the world, indebted. Their environmental systems have been really destroyed, many of their cultures have been destroyed, and I think that to assume that it's possible for the EU to set the example on how things should be done in other parts of the world is extremely arrogant, and it's just not an acceptable proposition. On the other hand, I do think that it is important to investigate a little bit this idea of what we mean by development. We have to fully defend the rights of the developing countries to have economic development, to increase the well-being of their citizens, to have the kind of social and institutional systems in place that make for health and stability and prosperity. But to think that can be done by becoming the factory for cheap consumer goods that are, bought by all of us in the West, I think is very problematic. We have to really think about another way of development, which is not depending on digging up resources, using low-cost labour in factories and producing consumer goods that then just get sold to the rest of the world. So we really have to think about this development and what it really means. We also have to remember that exactly, I was about to make that point, that there are various researchers which estimate that something like 60% of the greenhouse gas emissions that are attributed to China are actually directly linked to goods that are purchased by people in the rest of the world. So in fact, China is producing greenhouse gases for goods that we consume. So I think that this model of development is a completely unsustainable one, and we really need to investigate that a little bit more.